JJ the CPA here. Let's talk about the backside of getting the PPP money. So once you get your PPP money, then your 8 weeks starts, the 56 days. And the thing to keep in mind is I know that we keep calling it a PPP loan. It's a paycheck protection program. When it's given to you, it is initially considered a gift, period, the end. The 8 weeks following you getting the money, it is very clear in the law that you are only able to use it for which it is intended, period. It is meant to be used only for wages. The payroll taxes that are related to that, of course, can come into play, but it's not part of the forgiveness. Interest on your mortgage payments or business loans that are literally in the business. Now, as it relates to the interest portion, you're not able to use those dollars to make the full payment. You'll have to figure out with your bank if you're sending in 2 checks or how you're allocating that. But all I'm telling you is it only goes towards the interest payment. As it relates to utilities, there's no way to be creative on this. It's the most basic utilities that you would consider utilities. If you've considered something utilities on your P&L over time, that has no bearing on it. It is electric, water, gas, garbage pickup, and that wouldn't include if you have a shredding service. It is the nasty garbage that you put outside in a nasty garbage can that the garbage truck picks up. It does not include IT expense, but it does include your internet fees. It does not include cell phone, but it does include your landline for your telephone. It does not include cable, and that is really about it on the utilities. It doesn't include office supplies. It doesn't include help. It doesn't include repairs. On the rent, if you're making a mortgage payment, it doesn't count towards the mortgage payment, even if in your thought process that is considered rent for you. It's not. If you do have a separate entity that holds real estate and you're doing self-rental, that counts. You're not going to be able to set up a new entity to now accomplish that. You're not going to be able to set up a new lease to accomplish that. The law is very clear that whatever was in play February 15th, you will then be stuck with that. If you go back and create anything, you're committing a crime. Literally, the act is very clear. These are criminal activities. It is fraudulent. You will not be able to go back and then pay yourself to apply for more PPP. You will have to go in front of a bank examiner, 100% of you. You'll not only have to show more documentation on how you came up with your figures, even though you did that to get the loan or the program money, but anything that substantiates that. You will not be able to create any strategy for yourself on how to get additional loan forgiveness. The purpose of the program is to give you money to pay your current employees. If your current employees are no longer with you for whatever the reason may be, you are able to replace them in the sense of not replacing them with family member unless that family member is literally doing that work. If you're talking about a replacement, it would be a replacement at that pay level. The thing to be completely clear on is that if you put in for your payroll amount, which you listed on your application, so there should be zero room for error, gray, misunderstanding, gee golly, I didn't understand it, gee golly, I didn't know. There's zero room for that. Look on your application, even if you didn't come up with the number, look on the application, you put down what your monthly payroll is. That's what it is. That's what you get to spend. If you don't spend all of it, then it's not forgiven. If you have more than that, then up to the amount that you put down as your monthly expense for payroll counts. The monthly payroll expense, what's included in that? Well, you should know because you determined it to get your loan. A refresher would be it's payroll, not payroll taxes, except for state unemployment. It's the employer paid insurance, only the employer paid portion. It's the retirement plan by the employer. So when you're looking at what are your monthly costs, it's on that application. So when you're wanting to know, well, how much do I have to spend on payroll? The first thing to know is whatever you got, 75% of it is expected to be used on payroll. So what did you get? Look at the second number on your application. There's no way you don't know what it is because it's on your application. Take that number by 75% and that's what you have to spend on payroll, period, the end. Now, you could spend more than that, but not on raises, not on hazard pay, not on severance, not on hiring additional employees, not on hiring your family members. There's no strategy to try and get this forgiven, period. The only strategy is to use it for what it's intended, and that is the money that you received, 75% of it's to go to payroll. If your employees have left and you've replaced them, then you're using it for payroll. If your employees have left and they don't come back, you're not able to get the forgiveness. If you use the money for payroll within the 8 weeks and then you fire or people leave after the 8 weeks and your head count is not up where it was when you made the application, then you will have your loan forgiveness affected. So let me be clear on that. That would assume that you spent the money on the payroll. Please hear me on this. There seems to be a massive misconception that you could just pocket all this money and then by June 30, if you hired everybody back on June 29th, you're completely forgiven. What you need to know is that there are backdoor booby traps, but the number one qualification is you have to spend the money in the 8 weeks, period, the end. There's no strategy to do it in any other manner. The money that you're getting, 25% of it max, can be used on rent, mortgage interest, or loan interest, the utilities that we indicated, period. You can use more than 75% on the payroll, but the only way that that would occur is if you had low payroll at the beginning of 19 or low payroll at the beginning of the period that considered your average monthly costs, and you have more payroll at the end, which means you have more payroll now. If that makes no sense to you, let's just say for a moment that when you put in application, so we can't forget that you put in application, you can't forget how you came up with the number. There is a calculation. If you forgot, you need to pull it out. You need to keep it handy. It is absolutely what you need to make your determinations on what the forgiveness is. So when you're looking at it, let's just say for grins, that when you looked at the last 12 months of your payroll, whether you use the last 12 calendar months or 2019, if you, to go to an extreme, if you had no payroll for 8 months in that period of time, and then you had payroll in the last 4 months, when you consider your average, surely this is simple math that you should understand. When you consider the average in those 12 months, the amount that you're getting for your loan or your program money is going to be less than what your current payroll is. So it is easy that you could have gotten less than what your current payroll is. So when it said you can spend more than 75% on payroll, that would be on the existing employees that you had at the time of February 15th, based on the head count then. It doesn't mean that you get to give raises and it count. It doesn't mean you get to give severance. It doesn't mean that you get to hire additional employees in addition to what you had on February 15th. So it is very likely that you could be spending more than 75% of the monies on payroll, and that is A-okay, but you can't spend more than 25% on these other expenses, which is rent, utilities, and the mortgage interest portion. The 75% mark, or the payroll cost mark, includes the salaries and wages, the commissions. If you normally pay a bonus annually and you break it out into a 2-week, that can be included. The employer paid retirement plan, so you'll need to figure out what that is and pay it in that time period, as well as the employer paid health insurance. At this moment, on April 13th, it is the opinion of me that you have to pay these within the 56 days. You'll just have to figure out how to work through the problems if you're for some reason running into an issue where your payroll that runs into this period of time would have to be paid, within the 56 days. Solve it, figure it out. What I would like is there to be, with all due respect to everybody, I understand we're in a crisis, but there needs to be less understanding. There needs to be more grasping. The fact of the matter is you've been gifted money for payroll, rent, utilities, employer match, employer health insurance, and interest. You've been gifted it. There's no strategy here now to get out of using it for those purposes. The only strategy would be you don't spend it on those purposes in the 8 weeks because you don't have those expenses. And then at the end of the 8 weeks, you've used it as it was intended to the expenses that you had. And now you have the opportunity to either hand the money back or convert it into a loan at 1%. So the 8 weeks is the important part here. The 8 weeks is what you have to spend the money. Anything you hear about head count and how many dollars went to payroll and did you let go of people after the 8 weeks, first is contingent on the fact that you spent all the money in the 8 weeks. If you don't spend all the money in the 8 weeks, then you need to know whatever portion you didn't spend or spend within the parameters will not be forgiven. Assuming you spend everything perfectly, if your head count drops when you hit June 30, you're not going to get it all forgiven, even though you spent it perfectly. If you don't spend the money and you're at the end of your 8 weeks, and then you hire a bunch of people after that, that doesn't now make your loan or your dollar amount forgiven, period. It's all based on those 8 weeks. So if you're the self-employed, I've got another video on that talking about what do you do once you get your PPP money. So am I being straightforward? Am I being blunt? And the reason is yes. And the reason is so that if you're listening to this video, you'll take it very seriously. And there won't be additional questions on the word strategy. There won't be additional questions on, can I use it for lawn care? Can I use it for CAM? Can I use it for a repair? It's the most basic, straightforward expenses that you can imagine. If you don't have them, then you're not going to have that amount loan forgiven. No harm, no foul. You don't need to find other ways to spend that money. This isn't an area where you're going to be able to find gray. 100% of you that get PPP money will be sitting in front of a bank examiner, eyeball to eyeball, without a representative. It's not allowed. You can't send a rep. You can't send one of your employees. You can't send an office manager. It will be you as the owner, and you will bring documentation, and you will need to show them what you did and when you did it. There are going to be fines for not doing it properly. How will the SBA know? Because 100% of you will be bringing documentation to the bank on behalf of the SBA they represent to show what you did, how you did it, how you came up with your numbers. There's no games to be played. The 8 weeks you need to take very, very, very seriously. Now, we could shrug it off. Might be your best friend that's at the bank. Probably not going to be your best friend sitting across from you. There's going to be a massive amount of individuals that weren't able to spend the money properly. But it needs to just be that you didn't have the expense and you waited the 8 weeks to, in essence, use it for any other purpose. I'm sure there'll be more clarifications to come. I'll have more videos as we talk about the forgiveness. But the thing to note is that when people say, I need to understand the forgiveness, here's what you need to understand. You, on that application, said, here's what my monthly payroll costs are. Spend it on that. If you don't have enough, there's no way to come up with how to spend it for something else. You have up to 25% that goes to the utilities, the rent, etc. There's no strategy to come up with something else. Period. So in terms of I need to understand the forgiveness, it's simple. You spend the money the way that it's directed. Period. Whatever you can't, it's just not forgiven, and then you give the money back. So if you don't want to have a loan at the end, it's simple. You spend what you have on the things that qualify, and at the end, you write a check back. You're not being given a loan. You're being given a gift that if you are unable to, because you don't have the expense, have money left over after the 8 weeks, then in essence, it's converted to a loan. It's not a loan up front. It's not based on your credit. There's no collateral. There's no guarantees on it. It was a gift from the government for the 8 weeks to use it for what it's intended. All right. These aren't usually my tone in these videos. But for those that are listening, here's what you need to know. Quit figuring out a strategy. It's illegal. Forget it. Stop it. I'm not going to answer any more questions related to it. I'm only going to refer those that have questions to this email. To this video, period. Quit it. There's no strategy. And it has nothing to do with moral or ethics. It has to do with the law and it being a crime for using it for other purposes, period. I'm talking this way so that you will hear me and you will comprehend and you will digest, because I'm tired of answering questions about strategies and how to come up with different ways to spend the money. I doubt you're even listening now because you've already gone somewhere else because you don't want to hear what it is that I'm delivering to you. But the reason I'm delivering it to you and in this manner, so you will take it dead serious so that you don't end up in trouble committing a crime with penalties. Okay? When the government gives away money, they expect it to be used a certain way. There are going to be heavy penalties and problems for using it incorrectly. You get a large amount of loan, you have a crime, what do you think is going to happen? You're not untouchable. It doesn't matter, there's a crisis. This is not for you have a sniveling extra problem that you think is all justifiable and somebody's getting ready to die unless you use this money. There's no excuses for that. All right. Hopefully you've heard me. I doubt anybody's even listening to all the way to here. JJ the CPA out.